In today's video, I'm going to walk you through how I build my tool carts. It's relatively simple. It's relatively cheap. It used to be a lot cheaper. And I think it's about as straightforward as can be in terms of not needing many tools, not needing a ton of material. You can change, play with the dimensions all you want. So hopefully this will give you an idea so you can at least play around with ideas and maybe this one's right for you. Now this is a comically simple design. And if you're saying to yourself, I can do better, yes, you can. But when I originally stumbled upon this design, I didn't have much. I had a crappy table saw, I think a chop saw, and then a drill and a driver. So I had to build something that only used those tools. And that's what this cart design does. It's 2x4s. I'm using MDF now. I used to use 3/4 inch plywood in the past when it's cheaper. Some castors, and then I use 3-inch decking screws to go right through the side, mainly because I can reuse them later. They don't ever seem to strip. But you could save some costs if you go cheaper castors and cheaper screws. In total, it was about $70, not including these. I stole these off something else and replaced them with cheap $5 mini castors for that. But for 4 2x4s, there's another one in there, the 2x4 MDF, the 3-inch screws, and then the 4 replacement castors. It was like 70 some bucks. So it's no longer as cheap as it used to be. That's for sure. And I also would say these castors have gone up, good Lord, a lot in price. And if you're going to a Home Depot, I don't love these. I've actually had some problems with these ones over the years, and these are their expensive ones. I've found over time that sometimes the brake wears out or it just kind of slips a little bit. This little metal part will sometimes eventually kind of flop its way out and it becomes problematic. So if you're looking to build your own carts and you're looking at Home Depot castors, I don't know. These aren't my favorite and definitely not for the price they are now. I'd consider shopping around. Unfortunately, I don't have anything else to say get this instead, but all I say is just I'm not the biggest fan in the world of these. So I'm going to bring you into the whiteboard. I'll kind of draw out just the basic design and I'll show you a little bit of each step. It's essentially repeating the same step 4 times for the bottom and for the top, so it's not super complicated, and once you see how one corner is done, you'll be able to just copy it all the way around. My dimensions are specific to the tool I have, so you're going to have to take your tool and basically where do you want your hands, where do you want the top of it to be, and adjust your dimensions for that. Always keep in mind the height of your castors. You always have to factor that in. But anytime I say a dimension, it's very specific to my tool. So don't sit there and think that you have to use my dimensions. You can change any of these however you want. So the first step for this is to find the dimensions of 2 things. 1, the tool base itself and the height, and then 2, the height that you want it to be at. Depending upon what the tool is, it may be higher or lower. My bandsaw, I had to make the cart a little lower because the tool itself brings the table up quite a ways. For this tool, I'm going a little lower. In general, I want the top of the tables to be at a total of 34. So it's going to be a relatively low cart, and then the tool is going to sit on top. The tool itself is 13 by 19 by 9. Now, the outlay of the top of the cart is going to just be 24 by 24. I'm just going to cut that sheet right in half, and it's easy and it works out nicely. That way I get a top and then a bottom shelf as well. Now up next, you need to take your castors. If you're using them, find the height of those. These are roughly 5 inches. So I need to take the height of my tool and then the height of the castors, add those together, subtract it from the total that I wanted at the end, and that's going to be how tall the legs are. And then I also need to cut off the thickness of the top. So whatever material, 3/4 inch I think is the best here. So just chop an extra 3/4 of an inch off. So for me, this will be 14 3/4, which will bring this down to 19 1/4, I think. All right, let's look at the top-down view here. Now, the first thing is we have our legs, which will be our 4 corner posts, 2x4s. And then this is what I call just the inside-outside method. And it means we're going to have a 2x4 connecting all of these together. We'll pick whatever side. It's square for me, so it doesn't matter. 2 of them on opposing sides will be flush with the outside of these 2x4s. And then our other 2x4s will slot right in here and right in here. Inside, outside. And it just lines up really nicely. It's really quickly. You don't have to do a ton of measuring. And you get a bunch of points of connection for screws to go in because we can stagger the heights because it's all 2x4s. It holds together really well. It's really easy to build. It's really easy to assemble. You essentially get 2 boxes, turn them over, connect the legs in the middle, and you're done. Well, castors, then top, then you're done. Now, because this is specific to me and I'm doing a 24 by 24 top, it'll be slightly less. I'll lose the saw kerf. I don't care. I know it's a square, so everything is going to be the same. This will have to be adjusted to your dimensions. These are going to be 2x4s, so I know they're 1.5 inches thick, roughly. So I know that 3 inches total between these. I want to go 24 between them. 24 minus 3 is 21. So whatever the external thickness of these are, you're going to have to take that and subtract that from your total width, and that will then be your interior. And if it's a square, it's going to be the same the other way too. It's also going to be 21 or whatever your other one is, because it is the thickness of a 2x4 again. So for these carts, it's really simple. It's the same for all of the cross pieces, both sides. So my cut list is going to be 8 2x4s at 21 inches, 4 at 19.25, and then we'll deal with the cross bracing at the end because we'll see how many we want to use. So I always leave that at the end. It's easy to flip these over. They're not extremely heavy, so I don't worry about that right now. I'm just building the frame at first. At this point, hopefully you've got all of your pieces cut and everything is cut correctly, and you'll find out later if it's not cut correctly when we go to assemble. I'm going to do this on my bench because it's small enough, but my bench was built this way and I built it on the floor. So hopefully you can, if you have, a young enough back and have to build it on the floor, that works out. But if not, do it on the bench. A lot of it requires screwing in from, kind of lower angle, so it gets a little awkward on the floor. If you can prop it up, something like that. So I'll lay these out and I'll kind of show you before I screw them together what it looks like. Okay, this is the general layout. I like to do the bottom on ideally whatever a flat-ish surface is, because we want to put the castors underneath and it's going to help if they all line up flat on the bottom. We've got our 2 inside pieces. All of our outside pieces face the same way. Obviously, if it's a square, you can do it however you want. And then our 2 outside pieces connect to the face. Relatively simple. You now just screw these together. I put screws at every point from the outside, connecting this one to this one, this one to this one, and this one to this one. And I just kind of mark ahead of time with a pencil so that I don't run into anything. If you have clamps long enough, it's going to help a lot. I actually bought my first long clamps to build my bench. If you don't though, I also think at the time, I only bought a couple clamps. I put some dumbbells behind one side and maybe a bag of concrete or something like that behind the other side, and then stood on a piece. I just go one corner at a time. Now, obviously, it's going to help if this ends up square. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you plan to put something like drawers in later or something like that, the closer to square you can get. And I know we're working with 2x4s that aren't jointed or plain, so it's going to be tough to get it perfectly square, but try and get as close as you can and check after every one to make sure that they're square. You don't have to put all the screws in at once. You could put one in each side, check for square, and then if you need to, readjust from there. So we're just going to go ahead and screw this bottom together. I personally like to start with the outside legs of one side. I just need to make sure these are flush, and that way everything will fit behind that. Once these are secured to these, then these ones straight across just need to be flush to this guy and screwed into there, and it just all fits together nicely. It's just very important, well, somewhat important, that you get these first 2 flush and screwed in together. You're not able to clamp the clamp super tight because it'll bend it. You just need it enough with a little hand power holding it together to get them to go in flush. And like I said, keep track of where you're putting screws in each one, because then you want to go in through here and then all the way around. You need to have them offset a little bit. I usually just put 2 in each side. That way I have room to put each one in there. And 3-inch screws is what I'm using for this to get through there, but you can use probably 2.5 and be fine. After I've done this first initial outside one, I now come to do these inside ones. And again, I like to do one face first because then everything on that side lines up. We got a Harbor Freight around here locally, and if you have one, these clamps of their brand, which are significantly cheaper than Bessie, there are some differences and they may not last as long, but they work really well for the price, and I absolutely advise expanding your clamp collection if you have a local Harbor Freight. I think they're definitely worth it at like $7. It's something comically cheap compared to the Bessie. All right, I've now got this post attached to both of these. I just drive 2 through the middle into this as well on each side, and you're just going to complete this for the other side, and then you're going to flip it over and you're going to do this exact same operation for the top. At the end, you can choose whichever side is most level and flat to make it the top or the bottom. But like I said, it's essentially one step just repeated 8 times, which is what I love about it. It's super simple. It's easy to keep track of, and you can just roll around it easily at a time. Just keep track of where you're putting your screws so that you can go through the other sides and you won't have any problems. And once you're at this point, just flip it over and do the exact same thing on the underside. Hopefully it's close to square. Hopefully it's close to flat. If you get any rocking at the end, you can cut a sliver of wood and just screw it down underneath your caster with it, and that will help quite a bit. Again, these are shop carts. They're not fine furniture. So as long as it's steady and as long as it holds, that's really all I'm looking for here. You'll also notice that I've only drilled one incorrect hole so far. So that's a record for me. Most of these have at least 3 to 4 incorrect holes drilled in them. So we're on track. All right, we got a second misdrilled hole. I'm doing this after the Bengals and Broncos game. And if you guys watch that, you know how insane that is. So I'm a little amped up right now. The Bengals won. We were terrible and great. So we got two misdrilled holes. We'll see if we can make it through the other side without anything. So 2 is still on track to not be 4. Hopefully at this point you are all done with the box. I would sit it on the flattest thing you have. Hopefully you built it on there, but if not, and I'd find out which side is the flattest, and that'd be the side I'd put the castors on. But if you need to do any leveling, I'd rather do it on the top with just some little thin slices of shims. But other than that, just put the castors on, top on, and then if you want a bottom, drawers are a whole different thing if you want to do that later. If you want to sand it, which I'm going to, I do it now before the top and everything's on so I can get to the inside. The 2x4s that I got are unbelievably rough, and I got multiple splinters through this. So hopefully this helped you. It's intended to be the simplest thing in the world. It's not fancy. It's not great. It's not amazing. If you want to do more to it, have at it. It's intended to get this built so we can get the tool on it and use the tool. The cart is mostly done. I had to do a little shimming under one wheel. I ripped the edge off a 2x4. I'm now going to add some bracing underneath because I'm using MDF. If you're using 3/4 plywood, I've never had a problem not using bracing. I have a little pocket hole mini jig. I'm going to use that. You don't have to. You can just screw in from the side and the top. Do whatever you want to do. I just like that kind of peace of mind. So other than that, just a little bit of shimming and it was pretty good. And this is essentially done. And now I get to whip out the new tool, which will be a future video exploring that. I also forgot we need to put the top and the bottom on, but that's pretty straightforward. I just screwed the top directly down and in. And then I don't bother notching the bottom. I just slide a piece straight up in there and screw it down. I'm going to just pocket hole some braces in here. There were going to be 3, but I cut one too short. And that was the last of my 2x4. Unbelievably, I did basically go through 4 of them. Not sure how that worked out, but I thought I'd have a whole one left. And if you don't have a Kreg pocket jig, that's fine. Just screw them in or dowel them in or something like that. I don't use this much, but when I need it, it's extremely handy. And it's just one of the cheapest ones, the tiny little kit. The only expensive part of this is if you use their screws. That kind of adds up if you use it a lot. But otherwise, I think these are really nice to have around for the rare times you use it, maybe 3 times a year for me. But sometimes it's just exactly what you need to do the job if you don't want to, drill through both and dowel it or whatever. Sometimes it's just really quick to do it this way. There it is. The tool cart is all done. This is how I build all my tool carts and how I will build every tool cart going forward in the future. If you want to spend more time and make something beautiful, you want a mortise and tenon and all of that, absolutely do it. For me, I just want to use the tool, so I want the cart done as fast as possible. And these have been sturdy for me. I've never had a problem with them. So if you have any questions, hopefully I didn't leave you with any questions and that everything is in here, but let me know if you have any questions. And if you have any kind of simple, cheap improvements, throw them out there. And if you have any ideas for better casters in the same price range for people, definitely throw those out there because I do not love these expensive-ish Home Depot ones. All right, thanks for joining me. Have a good one.